Yeah, ready. Should I get it going? Want me to start it up?
Yeah, that's fine. That's recording. So, okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to start with our first public hearing for Gary Ballier. This is a new process, so we're going to have to bear with us in terms of how we're hearing for these requests. Gary, maybe the best thing to do, since we're recording off of here, could I ask you and anyone, if you want your wife to come sit with you just up here so we can hear each other better? And then I've pulled up your property here, and you can kind of maybe give us a rundown of where the request is coming from and your intentions, and we'll be able to kind of discuss it from there after you give us a rundown of what you're hoping to do. So,
Okay.
And kind of your grounds for this request. So,
What we're trying to do is add a 450 square foot room on the edge of the house right here. It's just going to be tied in. It's going no farther to the west towards the road or anything. It's just going south. And what it's going to be is just a windowed room for plants.
Okay.
So you have a plant room.
Okay. Well, maybe let me set it up a little bit just for the record, to kind of be on the same page with what we look for with variances, and then I may have you expound on it a little bit more, and may have some questions for you. But so just since we're recording this, I'll put on the record, my name's Brandon Richards, and I'm the one that's been appointed by the city to do as the hearing officer for variance requests. And so what we're doing today is obviously having a public hearing related to your request for a variance. And so we'll have, like I said, you can maybe speak to it. I may have some questions for you. And then if there's anybody that has come from the public that wants to make a comment, we'll invite them to give some input as well. Just a little bit of background so you kind of understand the parameters of a variance and what governs a variance. And so a variance request is governed primarily by Utah State Code. And so in the Utah State Code, specifically in Title 10, Chapter 9A, Section 702, not that you'll remember that, it kind of walks through what you need to do to get a variance, what you need to show, and then some restrictions. Hooper City has also its own code that talks about granting a variance, but it mirrors, most importantly, the parts that it mirror are from the state code. And so it's identical in how we're limited in granting variances. So a couple of the most important things to kind of keep in mind as we talk about this today is basically to get a variance, and this comes from the state code and from our code, we have to find, the city hearing officer has to find that literal enforcement of the ordinance would cause an unreasonable hardship for the applicant, and that it's not necessary to carry out the general purpose of the land use ordinances. The other thing that is really important that I'll probably ask you specifically about here in a minute is that Utah State Code makes it so that we cannot grant a variance if it's just based on, if the request is just based on either economic harm or if the issue was self-imposed. So the issue for which you're complaining of that's making it impossible for you to do what you want, if that issue was self-imposed, the state says we can't give a variance for that. Or if it's, like I said, purely economic in nature, the hardship that you're talking about, we're not allowed to do a variance. And so those are some of the parameters that are put onto us. So anyway, with that set up, as far as the proceedings today, what my intention is I like to really study each request and really put some time into considering what's being requested against what the code says and what's happening with the property. And so what my thought is we'll hear everything that you want to say, have any questions answered that I have, and then anyone that wants to say something from the public, if any, will do that. At that point, I think we'll end the hearing, and then I'll take it under consideration. And I would say within 2 weeks, I'll do a written kind of decision on it. That way, you're not having to wait too long, but I also want to make sure I take the time necessary to really study the issue before I make a decision. So, okay, so back to kind of the issue. I have on the request, it says that the widening of street encroached on existing home's property line, and so seeking variance to add on to existing home in line with current building structure. So I did have a question on that. You might be able to enlighten me a little bit on. So talk to me a little bit about how the widening of the road caused a problem for you.
Because it took away the 30 or 35 feet, Malcolm, it was supposed to be.
30 sounds about right, but we
30.
could double check.
And see, I'm 20-something.
So you're talking about 4700
Yes,
West?
4700, yeah.
Okay.
Originally, if you went back to the old day land plats, my property line comes clear there. on
To the
west
other,
side of
to the
Pink
other
Road.
side, okay.
Yes. And then you widened the roads once and took away from me, and then they widened 47 this last time and took away again property. And that's where I've lost my frontage.
And do you remember how long ago it was they widened that 4700 West?
The last time would have been, what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Yeah, not too long ago,
Been that
because
long
I
ago.
was home with my cancer,
Yeah.
is when they started tearing stuff apart.
Okay. And so that's taking you, so what I guess the problem that you're saying that you have is that you don't have enough distance between
Yes.
the road and your house to
The
do
problem,
the addition?
right.
Yeah.
Especially where the house sits on an angle, because that back corner is where we're wanting to put the room. And that's,
You
that
see
narrows.
that white line just off from the sidewalk? Excuse me, right here? That's a white fence,
Okay.
and we're just gonna add on just about maybe this much,
Even with the rest
just
of the house.
right along with the house and the roof.
So it would stay
So
consistent with
it's not going out that way
Yeah, but you
at
just
all.
follow the house line.
It's not going that way at all towards the road. It's just coming back this way to be lining up with the rest of the house here. And it's going south, it's not going west at all. So it wouldn't be adjusting anything as far as
Frontage,
going to the road at all. The only place it's going is further
south.
south into farther into our property. And
Okay.
it's a small room.
And before, do you remember offhand, like before they widened the road, did you have the necessary
Oh,
amount of space to be
Yeah.
able to do
Yeah.
that with,
yeah, they
to
took away
meet the
quite a
code?
bit of property when they come in and wiped that.
We
And
used
it's
to
the only-
have
oh, go
great
ahead.
big trees all along the side of that was clear out,
Okay.
clear
Beyond that
out
yellow line.
here in the middle of the road.
Yeah,
Our trees
There's a
were clear
canal.
out here. And we had to
Gotcha.
take them all out so they could do the road. And
Okay.
before that, we had a canal, the old road canal, and I guess it's a
Outside.
drainage ditch, you would call it.
And I'm guessing the issue, it's not an issue with the west property line at all, correct? You're just talking about the one in front of the house that is causing you the issue as far as the distance?
Well, actually, the front of the house used to be on 4700 there.
Well, and I shouldn't say front of the house, the side of the house that
this is-
fronts up on 4700.
We switched the front to there, so this is the side now, but
Side of the house, okay,
according to the paperwork, it's still the front.
okay.
So, and then with that being a major
Well, I
road,
believe on an arterial collector, I believe it is 35 feet, so is what's currently.
So are you thinking before this last round 3 years ago, did you have the 35 feet before the
movement.
adjustment of the road 3 years ago? Okay. Anything else you want to tell me about it? I think I understand better than I did what it was. So,
I really don't know what else to tell you, just other than the fact that originally we had the property, and with them widening that road. they
okay, and
removed it
just because these are the two things that sometimes trip people up on getting a variance, so I'll just ask so that it's on the record. So the first one would be is we have to make sure that what you're asking for is not self-imposed, and so I would just ask you to explain, in your view, how the problem that causes you not to be able to put the addition on is not something that you created.
No, I didn't create the widening of this road. That was done by, I'm not sure if it's the state or Hooper that done that. I think it was UDOT, 'cause I think that's a UDOT road. But they came in and took the property. We were never compensated for property. We were compensated for shrubbery and fencing. That was it.
Wasn't something that you, and this sounds silly, but wasn't something that you went and asked UDOT to do or said,
Oh, no.
please take
We
my
didn't.
property?
We
I'd
were-
I'd
we
rather
were
it still be a
told.
little road.
Yeah, we were told, we're taking this.
The other one that sometimes is a bar for variance is the economic piece. So if you remember, I mentioned earlier that you can't grant a variance if the hardship is purely economic. So help me with that one, as far as explain to me if it would be possible to do what you want to do somewhere else on your house, or is that location the spot where it will work and it's not?
That is the spot that we're wanting to put it, and that's where it's gonna tie into the house the best and give her all the sunlight she wants.
That room would face
South,
and
east,
it would bring in the sun from
west.
the east as well as from the west. So what it is basically just a plant room for my plants. It's not going to be like a big room like this.
No, it's like 20 feet by 24 feet.
And how close would it put you to that 4700 West?
It wouldn't
think
put us
it's-
any closer than that. See that fence?
Well,
right
that
there
corner
that
there, I think
showed
it's
you
20,
there?
22 feet, 26
Yes.
feet, I can't
It'd be
remember now.
this right here and right along with the house. It's just going this way. That's why I keep repeating it's going to the south.
And maybe we can
It's not
figure it
going
out, but
west
it,
at all. If
yeah,
you
that I
do
guess
this
my question
route-
is, how far away are you from the road now, your house? Maybe we can figure that out.
Is
But
that 28 feet?
Yeah, if you put that little box right here, it'd be here, and it's only going to here. It's not going all the way to this fence. It's only going just a little bit down.
and the main
That's all
concern
I
I have
want.
is going out towards
Oh, it's
4700.
not
So
going that way. The
so
way,
what that and
the way
that's
the
my
house is sitting here, it won't go any further
Any
west
further west, it's gonna
There-
stay in line with that
the way it
west
is
wall.
already. It'll
Okay.
stay right in line.
So whatever that distance is, whether it's that 28 feet or whether it's something different, like 25, whatever it is, you're not going to push it out
No.
closer
Oh,
to
no.
the road.
It's not going to go any further
No, it's
west than
staying
what
right
it
in line
already
with that west
is.
wall on that house.
Okay. Anything else you want to tell me about it, as far as what you're wanting to do or what caused the problem?
No, like it says, the problem is just the fact that they widened the road and I lost in the frontage
Okay.
for my 35 feet.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Don't know if I can answer it, but
Bless
you could
your
ask.
heart.
You could ask it.
I'm pretty
You
sure
could
you
ask
can.
it.
Help me to understand. And I'm really lost and confused. So I'm begging you to help me to understand
I will if I can. Go ahead.
why it becomes an issue when it's not going to the road to the west at all. It is going to the south. And the south is actually to the side of the house. And the way the house sits now, it's facing north. It's going to the back of the
Yeah.
house.
Well, that's-
It's not moving to the road. It's not moving to the sidewalk. And so I'm just confused
Right.
of why
So-
it's an issue.
So the best I can answer that is, so in Hooper and every city, we've got setbacks that spawn off of wherever the primary residence is located. So whatever side we're talking about, if it's a primary residence, there's a setback requirement to an artillery road, and in this case, 35 feet. And so because what you're doing is creating a new structure, albeit it's adding on to the current structure, creating a new structure, that triggers a setback requirement. So when you go and try to do that, the building inspector looks at it and says, well, you can't build that close to an artillery road because it's going to be closer than 35 feet. We don't allow that. And I get what you're saying, but it is creating a new structure that is closer than what the setback requirement is. And so Hooper sets these setback requirements, generally speaking, they blanket the entire city just to try to have a conformity in place so that everybody has to live by the same rules. And so that's what's happening. So when something happens like this and they widen the road, there's no way where we would ever come in as a city and say, well, you got to tear your house down now. I mean, obviously the house stays, even though it's not in compliance with that setback anymore. But it's when you come in and try to add to that footprint where it triggers the setback requirements, along with any other requirement that the city has. And so then you're up against this issue that you're coming in to ask for a variance because you want to be able to do that. And again, usually the two things that trip people up are either they cause the problem themselves. For example, I had one time where somebody came in, bought a piece of land, wanted to put a big structure on the side of it, but it didn't fit with the setback requirements. Well, that was an issue that was self-imposed. They didn't have to build their house the way they built it. In that case, they could put the outbuilding in other spots, it was kind of a purely economic issue, and it was caused by them. They didn't have to have an outbuilding. So anyway, and that's why I asked kind of those questions, like, is this economic in nature? Is this self-imposed? But that's the reason generally. And I get what you're saying. I know you're just going down that way, not out toward the road. But anytime you add to that footprint, it triggers the setback.
That's why it throws up the caution lights
Yep.
and says stop.
Yeah, and that's why the building inspector or whoever, stopped it, they have to follow the city ordinance, and that's in place to protect everybody so that there's some conformity. And so they did their job by stopping it, and then you've done what you're allowed to do to come and ask for the variance. And so, okay.
That's fair. Thank you.
Hopefully that answered the question.
It did. It
All
helps
right.
me to understand because
Yeah,
I'm just trying to figure out, we're not going closer to the road,
yeah,
but yet we have to do all this
yeah, and that's
to
it.
make it right.
Yep, and it's just because it's adding to that footprint, and that's what triggers that issue. So,
Well, thank you. I appreciate
all right,
that.
yeah, no problem. So, unless you guys have anything else to add, I'll briefly stop and ask if anybody in the public that has shown up today in the audience wants to come to make a comment related to this variance request. I see Mr. Fowers does. We'll probably have to have you come up here and probably sit in the chair. Just we're recording on the table here, so.
You can just stand close.
Or just stand, that's fine.
Technology.
And just state your name and whether you're a Hooper resident.
Okay, I'm Dale Fowers, and I'm a resident, and one thing that you said that I would have question on, when you said this 4700 West was widened, and it put the street wider to your house, the city did not compensate you at all for that.
Not for property. They compensated us for our trees and the moving of the fence.
So my question would be, if they weren't compensated for the property, was it already owned by the city? Was this the widening of this road was widened, that easement was already owned by the city? Because if it wasn't, then the city would have had to buy that property from you.
I'll tell you what I was told.
Okay.
They brought the guy from Hooper City up, and he basically told me that, that's your property, we're taking it, we've got more money than you, so.
And I was standing there when he said it. And we both looked at each other.
Like, really?
And my jaw dropped, and I said, so basically you're saying, if we want to do anything, you have more money than us. And he just smiled and he said, we have more money than you. And so we just went, so we don't have any choice of saying anything.
Take what
You're
you
going
get
to take
offered.
it.
So and I guess, Dale, what your point is whether or not it was owned before the
Right,
widening or
it was
not.
The widening of 4700 was already part of the easement of the road.
Well, if
And
it,
I don't know if this, am I allowed to ask, like, is this the house that was it once owned by Grants?
Yep,
yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure
yep, it was an
And,
old farmhouse.
and what we were under the understanding, when we paid property tax for the property
To
clear
the
across to the
west side of
road.
that paved road, the guy from the county told me, he says, you've been paying for years, because your property line went clear across the street. And he fixed that part of it.
Okay.
I think
All
that's pretty consistent with homes that have been here for a while. As far as you may own out to the middle of the road or own to the other side of the street, even though you can't do whatever you want with it because there's a road there, so.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to make a public comment on this one? Nobody? Okay, seeing no other public comments, we'll go ahead and close that part of the meeting down. Any other points that you want to make other than what you've already said?
Nope.
Okay, well, I do appreciate you coming in today and explaining the request. I understand it better and appreciate your participation. Like I said, it'll take more or less 2 weeks, and I'll put together something in writing as far as the decision goes on the request. So, thank you.
Well, thank you kindly for explaining.
Yeah, no
Because
worries.
I don't understand all of this stuff. I'm just an old person that's lived out here my life, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank
Thanks for coming in.
No problem, thank you.
Good to see you guys.
you. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, have a good
day.
afternoon. Should be Ryan Fisher next.
So, Ryan Fisher, somebody here related to the Ryan Fisher request?
Give me 1 second. Let me double check that I have this scheduled correctly. Or sent to you correctly. imagine they're probably just.
Okay, why don't we noticed them all up to start at 2, so I think we're okay if we come back to that one and jump over to Raymond and Annalisa Glenn. Is there somebody there related to that variance request? So nobody's here for the Glenn request either? Okay.
I'm here to observe. I mean, I got it.
Oh, yeah.
for
Oh, yeah.
it, but
Yeah, no
I'm
worries.
not here representing.
Okay. And Ryan Fisher, he's not here either. Okay.
Well,
Well,
that
What we're
Ryan,
here for is a Ryan Fisher meeting.
what was that?
That's what we're here for, is that Ryan Fisher meeting.
Looks like it'll start in about 5 to 7 minutes. So.
okay, we'll just hang out and stare at each other for a minute. So if anybody from the Ryan Fisher request comes in, we'll hear that one, and then the Raymond and the Annalisa Glenn request. They may be showing up about 2:30 because the way the notice went out, it made it kind of look like they might each take half hour. So we'll just go on break until somebody shows up.
Pause that.
Yeah, probably.
You want to explain to us the variance before we get there?
What?
Could you explain the variance he's requesting?
Probably not unless he shows up to represent it. Then we'll get into it. But I don't want to get ahead of ourselves and get into it with him not being here.
Brian, it might be, he should be here too, but Brian Hotchkiss, I think, owns the land with him, so it might be a Brian Hotchkiss, but they're 2:30. So.
All right.
Is there anything we can do moving forward to, I thought you mentioned Morgan just briefly, but something about, you notice them at a certain time, then you kind of obligated to that. Should we change the way we
If we have,
like we notice?
I was kind of glad it was noticed like this, just because I was worried it said like 2:33. Because then if we got done early, we'd have to sit, but we're gonna have to. But I actually thought this was good. Like
No, that would be nice. I get it. That's effective if we
Yeah.
can do that.
So I think that actually is better just to say, hey, everybody just show up at 2.
Yeah, so, good. They should be here. I'm sure they'll be here.
Okay. Let's wait a minute. Well, you can come up and ask it. Yeah, but I don't think we're recording anything.
See, so that we can hear you in the recording. And then we'll just run through this with you, Brandon. I'll kind of give you an intro and ask a few things. Okay.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with our second variance request that's scheduled for today. And so this is a request that was filed by Brian Fisher. Property address is 4965 South, 6300 West. The variance request was asked related to this piece of property, essentially stating, I believe, that the frontage is 141 feet. When the property was purchased, the minimum frontage, the application states was 130, but with it being 150 now, I believe that's what's caused the issue. So just to start it out, just to put onto the record because we're recording it, I'm Brandon Richards. I've been appointed by the city to be the hearing officer for variance requests. And so what we'll do today is, in a minute here, I'll have you explain what you're wanting to do, what the issues or concerns are, and what's your view of resolving those issues or concerns. A variance request is governed by 2 different sets of law, but they're similar. One is the Utah State Code, Title 10, Chapter 9A, Section 702, and then also Hooper City Code, which mirrors in all important aspects that Utah State Code. Basically, what we have to do to be able to grant a variance is the city has to find that literal enforcement of the ordinance would cause unreasonable hardship for the applicant, and that literal application of the ordinance is not necessary to carry out the general purpose of the land use ordinance. The other thing is, as far as state code and city ordinance, that's pretty clear, is that the hearing officer cannot grant a variance if the unreasonable hardship is either self-imposed or economic in nature. And so I'll probably ask you a couple of questions about that as we go along. And as far as the process goes, like I said, I'll let you speak to what you're wanting to do, what's causing the issue, and so on and so forth. I may have some questions for you. It's also a public hearing, so if anyone that's come in today wants to speak to it, we'll give them some time to make a public comment about it. And then from there, once we cover all that, what I try to do is within 2 weeks from today issue a written decision so that I can really get into what's being asked for, do a little bit more research if I need to, and then issue something in writing within about 2 weeks. And so so we're on the same page with what we're doing today. So if you want to just maybe state your name and go over what the request is and what the issues are, I'll let you take some time.
Okay, sounds good. So my name's Ryan Fisher. I live in 5261 South, 6250 West in Hooper. I purchased this property about 4.5 years ago with the intent to build a home on it. I also had some family members that were going to hopefully build, and a friend actually too. So at the time that I bought the property, this was future zoned for half acres. If you look up on the map here, the property directly to the south, which is owned by Philip Ma, literally just a few months before I applied for rezoning, he was approved by the city council to rezone his to half acres. So we took quite a while, a year or two, going through the process trying to get that rezoned. We tried to get it for half acres, and that was shot down by the planning commission, and it was shot down by the city council, both. So we kind of changed our strategy and just thought we'd try to put a couple of houses on that. In the meantime, one of the reasons that we were shot down is that the master plan had been opened. And so, and this is Brian, he's co-owner of this piece now. He wasn't at the time.
Just riding his coattails.
So yeah, and we were going to actually build homes together. That was the original plan way back. So when I applied for that rezone, the master plan of the city had been reopened, and we were told at that time that they didn't want to approve any rezones while the master plan was open. So that process took just under 2 years for that to be approved, if I remember correctly. So then we decided that we were just going to try to go for some 1 acre lots, and then some of the restrictions that the city put on us. We met with Jared here at the city. We met a few different times with several different people. It kind of became apparent that this was going to be an uphill battle for us, and so we just decided to sell the piece of property. Well, the issue now has become that because of that frontage, which originally was going to be rezoned, and it would have been within city ordinance, right? So that would have been 130 feet. So now people are wanting to buy the property, but they can't put a home up on the front unless they build a road into the back. And so that's kind of been an issue for some people. And I think it was at least my interpretation of what kind of the pushback that we got from the residents around and from the city is that they didn't want a subdivision out there. And we all understand how that works. You know, nobody wants a subdivision in their backyard. But now what's happened is we've had 4 buyers that have turned it down because they wanted to just build one house on 8.39 acres and can't do it unless they spend significant cost to get to the back, and so that they have the 150 frontage. So all we're trying to do is if we can add that, and it's really 9 feet of frontage to get to 150, then that would allow someone to be able to build in the front and then still have that agricultural use for the back. That's what all 4 of the people that I even brought, one of the offer sheets that we had from them that we lost them this last February. Each time they would call the city and were told this information, they changed their mind. And so it is not economic only in nature. It also has to do with the timing of the city plan, and probably wouldn't have purchased it had we known that we weren't going to be able to even just put one house on it without the cost of the road. So that's a little bit about kind of the history of why we're seeking the 10-foot variance there.
And as I'm looking at that, is that all one parcel then?
It is, yeah,
that
4965,
4965.
yeah.
And the piece that has a house on it, is that all the same parcel, even though it has a line on this?
No, so
Is that
that's
different.
That's the Cottoms,
subdivided.
yeah, they live,
Okay.
that's their 1 acre piece right there.
Okay, so we're talking about this
That's who we bought it from.
Yeah, that's who we purchased
bigger
it from.
piece,
Yes.
4965, okay.
Yeah,
And basically what you're saying is to put it on the road, you need 150 feet, you have 141.
right.
And as far as other options, are you saying, I mean, what other options would there be as far as that piece of property and putting a house on it?
So I think if I understood it correctly when we visited with them, you could build a road back into the back to where you could get more of the frontage, but the cost to do that was adding,
Road, curb, gutter, sidewalk.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
it was between $75,000 and $100,000 on some estimates based to get it back there, and so people didn't want to really put the money into that to
If you-
invest.
if you look at some of those other parcels, those other properties, they're obviously before the change to 150 feet of frontage. I mean, they're under 150 as well down the road, which I get change happens and
Right.
evolve. But I feel like it would be in the city's best interest to go this route, lock up 8 more acres to just one lot, instead of eventually form a subdivision that's just more taxing on the sewer system, more, there's a lot of reasons that it'd be in Hooper's best interest to do this.
A couple of questions, I guess, that come to mind. So you bought it 4.5 years ago, roughly?
Yes.
And at
It's
that
actually been
point-
almost 5 now. It'll be 5, I think, in January. Yeah.
Do you have that? No, you
Okay, so yeah, okay, roughly 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And then, so at that point, it was in, if I'm understanding what you said, it was in the future.
Yeah, and I have
plan.
the map.
I don't necessarily
included
look
all
at it,
that.
but it hadn't been rezoned already, but you were thinking you would ask for a rezone
Well-
when you bought it?
That's correct.
Okay.
It was the future plan had the
Like the
rezone
future
at
land use
R2,
map. Yeah.
and I brought that with me to show you that. And then after the master plan was open, which was about 2.5 years after we bought it, then that's when the rezone happened to the anything west of 5,900 is acre only.
Right,
So.
okay.
So again, I think we kind of got caught in bad timing. I think this 6 months earlier would have been an easy thing to take care of. I had talked to a couple of city council members before I bought it who didn't see any problem with the rezone at the time. And again, this was before the plan was opened, to be fair. But I, kind of tried to do my due diligence with that because we knew that that was a little bit of a flag lot and that there could potentially be issues. And so that's why we went ahead with it after those conversations.
Okay. I can't think of any other questions on my end, but there may be some comments from the public. If anybody from the public wants to make a comment, come on up and just stand near so we can pick up the recording. And so come up closer. Yeah, there you go. Say your name and if you're a resident of Hooper.
Yeah, I am. My house is right there to the north.
Okay.
It's Pam Corden. So I live, right there. So are you saying 150 off the road? You're not, so they are. So that house and that house is 153. So those 2 houses.
Right.
So is that what you're asking
No,
for?
across the street, I know those are narrower lots.
Yeah, now
there.
this one, so let me show you.
Yeah, we were not saying that all of them
Yeah,
are under
this one
150.
actually is in the road, if you've ever looked at this one here. So I guess I'm just trying to understand what you mean.
Oh, we just want.
So it's only 141 feet wide right now.
Is what we have.
And so you cannot put a house there, despite the fact that there's several other homes in the area that are on less than that.
Right.
So we're just saying that if someone could build a home out there in the front with that extra 9 feet, then this doesn't have to get developed. Because the only
And you mean coming this way, right, to cause
yeah,
it's not
frontage,
to-
150 feet of frontage.
Setback,
Yeah.
30
So
or
that means a
50
long
road.
6,300.
Just like
Yes.
And you're saying if you put a road through here, it costs too much for people?
Well, so the city would require them to build a road into the back, past the flag, the narrow part,
Right.
so that they could then have that 150 feet of
And it
frontage.
just looked ridiculous having a house.
So on top of all the regular costs that you'd have of building a house, you'd have that additional road, curb, gutter, and so forth.
And
so
here's a question too, because I don't know this. Is it still R1?
it is still R1.
It
It's
is still
correct.
R1.
Yes, that's
Okay, so
right.
you're looking for one
We're not
house.
trying to we tried to rezone it to half.
Yeah, I know.
That didn't happen. So now all we're trying to do is get the frontage so that someone could actually do that. So it makes sense for them to buy that. And for you guys, because I know the opposition was there when we tried to rezone.
Well, we've already given Perkins like 5 feet, so he could put his road down there.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think he's very appreciative of that.
Yes.
I've had good talks with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think what
So I
we're
just
saying
don't
is,
know how you're gonna do that.
so if we can get the variance though, then that would allow somebody to do that, and then otherwise the only people that are going to be able to develop that would be a developer. Like they'll pay the money to get the road back
Right.
there and put the houses in there.
Right.
But
Which
if
no
it's,
one seems to want that.
No,
yeah, no one around there wants that. So I think this.
I don't want it.
So my original plan.
So I think it might be more beneficial to so when you're doing the public comment, I should have been more clear,
Yeah.
like
No, it's
probably
okay.
address.
It's my
so
first time.
Yeah, so probably just address a concern that you have with it, or if
Yeah, my
you're
concern is
okay
where-
with it, rather than asking that.
Where is that gonna go and
Okay.
who does it affect? Because we've already given up property,
Okay.
so.
I don't think you'd have to
Yeah.
give up anything. It would be whether the city would allow that variance, and nothing would change.
Either way,
No,
or,
no. They're not going to give us. They're not going to take away ground from anybody. That's not what a variance is. 'Cause am I saying that right?
No, to be clear, what they're
Yeah.
asking for is that frontage along 6300 West is 141 feet. The city requires 150 to put a house right there.
okay.
And so what they're saying
We
is,
have to
can
go
we please?
backwards.
No, they couldn't do it because they have to, on the frontage of that road, have 150 feet. And so what they're saying is, can we have a variance to allow to build a house there with 141 feet instead of 150? That's what
So
they're
back off
requesting.
the road the same as your house, or the same
Okay.
as next door.
Right. So that's what their request is,
Part
to
of
be,
that.
to be clear, that's
Okay.
what they're asking for.
Okay, that's good, because I didn't quite understand what was going on there.
Yeah.
And they'll keep all of that as agriculture.
As
However
agriculture.
they want it, whatever they want to do with their land. Yeah.
Okay, that cleared it up, thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. Any other public comment? Yes.
So we're gonna keep it at 3-minute comments. Okay.
What do you need, just my name?
Yeah.
My name is Deborah Maragoni. I just have a couple of comments. I know when you're not asking for this, but when we state overlays and rezones and stuff, an overlay is just an overlay. It's not a rezone, it's not a zoning.
Right.
It's just stating that that's a possibility. Also, a city council member should never have been giving an input on anything. That's out of what we do. My thought is when you purchase land, you're purchasing it as an investment, and sometimes things don't always work out. And sometimes when you make them, you make money and you do well on it, and sometimes things like this just happen and you don't get, exactly what you're hoping for. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to make a, yes, come on up.
I'm Jay Lyle, I live in
Will you come up here really quick? Sorry, our recorder can't hear you clear back there.
I just noticed in the picture, how long ago was this taken? How accurate is that, or how?
I'm not
I
sure,
just
that's-
snip it from GeoGizmo, so what you're seeing here on the TV is just what I snip.
It's in Weaver County.
Yeah.
So it's up to
Weaver
date.
County. Mhm.
Okay, that's my only question.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to make a comment on related to this variance request? Yeah, come on up.
Hi, my name's Scott Flowers. I have property just west, but it seems like it would be a very good solution to have a 1-acre lot there along the road, and that way it would landlock that for agriculture use. So I don't think that they should, they were caught in an unfortunate incident where the frontage wasn't what it was supposed to be, but we shouldn't persecute them for a simple 10 feet. 10 feet, I think it should be granted to them. So, like they've mentioned, it would landlock all the ground back behind that, which is kind of what everybody would like, the open space. So, I guess that's my opinion, so that's where I'm standing.
All right, thank you. Any other comments on this one? All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and close the public comment. Anything else you want to explain based on any of the comments made, and then we'll.
No, I did bring just some of the things that were required. This is the pre-zoning, and that's the actual. I don't know if you needed those still.
Sure. I mean, anything you want to give
We'll
to
just
me to
leave
look
that-
at, that's
that
fine.
with you.
Okay.
I had added a little more information in that original application. You're welcome to use the one you had or this one.
Okay, that sounds great, and I thank you for participating today. And with that, we'll close down the hearing. And like I said, it'll be approximately 2 weeks, so I'll do a written
Okay.
decision on it.
Thanks for taking the time. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, the last one on our agenda today is Raymond and Annalisa Glenn. Do we have anyone from? Okay, you guys. Okay, come on up. All right, welcome. So are you Raymond and Annalisa
Thank you.
Glenn? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start the hearing on this. I'll repeat myself a little bit just because we're recording it and want to make a clear record for each of the 3 hearings. So my name's Brandon Richards. I've been appointed by Hooper City to be their hearing officer related to variance requests. And so what we'll do today, I'll go through a little bit of the background on variances and what we're looking for as far as what needs to be shown to the city to grant the variance along those lines. And then from there, I'll let you go ahead and speak to your request, what you're wanting to do, what the issue of concern is, and I may have some questions as well. At that point, I'll also allow anybody from the public that wants to speak to the issue to be able to come up and make a public comment. After the public comment, I'll also allow you to speak again if something else comes to mind based on the comments that you want to explain. From there, we'll close down the hearing. I'll take about 2 weeks to go through it in great detail. I want to be able to research what I've learned today and provide a written decision within about 2 weeks to you. So to be clear, variance requests are governed by a couple of things. First, Hooper City Code has some provisions that talk about how you get a variance request, what the city has to look at to grant one, what we can't do. And then also Utah state law governs ultimately variance requests. And so in Utah State Code Title 10, Chapter 9A, Section 702, it talks about variance requests. And basically what the city's looking for is it has to be shown that literal enforcement of the ordinance would cause an unreasonable hardship for the applicant, so in this case you, and that the ordinance is not necessary to carry out the general purpose of the land use ordinances as well as any other provisions that we're talking about. So essentially you have to show, okay, literal enforcement of this is not necessary in our case, here's why. The other thing that I'm boxed in on, so to speak, is that I cannot grant the variance if the hardship that you're talking about is economic in nature or if it was self-imposed. So if the hardship was caused by you yourself, then I'm not allowed to grant a variance. And if it's solely, it's just going to cost a lot for us to do this, but we could do it some other way, it would just cost more, then I'm not allowed to grant a variance for that either. So it has to be something more than just economic. So with that background, I'll go ahead and let you explain what you're asking for, what the problem is, and what you're hoping to get out of your request. And maybe as you're looking through that, what I've got in the variance request is it states to build a house on the property. The frontage is, it's a little bit hard to read, 87 feet maybe, and the required frontage is 150. The required frontage is 150. We're wanting the variance to access the back portion. The land otherwise might be landlocked, excluding one neighbor. So that's what I had on the variance request, and I think we've pulled up on the map.
Yeah, so,
Is it that middle piece right there?
yeah, it's a sliver going through. And so what we would like to do is turn that sliver where we don't have the actual 150 feet into just a drive down the center of it and put landscaping on both sides and then put a center house. And basically that would be resident R1, and then the back portion, we want to use that for agriculture, for trees and lavender, and turn it into more of a garden community back there. We don't want to, it's not to be developed. We're not developing it out, we're just using it for, we have a business that we do tree service, and so that's pretty much what we're trying to go for.
Okay, so to be, just so I'm clear, because the last applicant that came in right before you, they also didn't have the right amount of frontage, but they were talking
Right.
about placing their home up near the road and just asking for the additional frontage. So I just want to be clear, what you're asking for is different than that. What you're wanting to do is essentially do what might be referred to as a flag lot, basically drive in
Yeah,
to
we're
the
looking.
center of the piece. and
We're
put
looking
in-
to go through the center of it. We're not looking to build anything close to the front, anything out there. It'll be set back probably where we can get the 150 from the lines, wherever it would be, because it's an odd shape there. And so you go from 80 something feet to 130 feet or something like that. Not quite sure exactly what the measurements are on that. Show it.
Give me a little bit of background on when you bought the property. How long ago did you buy it?
No, we're under contract for that.
Oh, okay.
We're
So-
still under
So you
contract.
have not purchased it
No,
yet?
we're
You're-
trying to get this to go through, and finances, of course, will be, to be able to do this is coming out of our other.
Okay, so essentially, to be clear, you've not purchased it, but you're coming in making this request, which I
Yeah.
assume the determination of this request might then determine whether or not you go through with your purchase or not. I mean, that's up to you, but this,
Yeah,
I'm
well, that's
assuming part of
that's the
process.
whole idea behind
Okay.
it. It's an idea to be able to still keep the agricultural zone, and at the same time, put a house on it so we can live there, to take care of the property.
Anything else you want to tell me? I think I understand what you're asking to do.
No, it's just like on the bottom of it says purpose of the house location. Use it with our business. A lot of people like to replant, and so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna plant trees all the way through there, and use the ground to be able to. We'll dig them up and re-put them throughout wherever they want trees put in, and kind of like a garden area.
Okay, and then I'm assuming so whoever's selling this to you and you've got the contract with them, I mean, I assume they also are supportive of something like this happening.
Yeah, they are. They're just, when we bought it, they were saying that, other people have had, smaller frontage, but that's before I guess the change or something, and that we could probably get a variance for this, and so that's why we put it through.
And do you have any idea how long ago the folks that own it now have owned it, like when they bought
Do
it?
you mind if I join you guys on representing you guys? It's 30.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is way.
Could probably help answer some questions. So,
Okay.
they've owned the property quite a bit. They just recently had this subdivided, so I would imagine whoever approved the recent subdividing of the property would have expected this to
Do you know how
come
long
apart.
ago
They just barely got it finalized right before we went under contract, so a few months ago. So the plat map was just barely redrawn, I think, probably 4 months ago.
As far as, explain that. So
Pelch
what
is
does
the
it,
ones to the south, right there.
okay.
So this was all one singular lot that was included. So that center section was attached to that property. So they were able to get that subdivided, but I know with the recent changes, I know this is going from R1 to what, 3/4 acre lots instead. So I mean, with the proposed changes of the future zoning, I mean, you'd think that they would have to realize that somebody's gonna come in and ask for.
So the one that subdivided it, is it the same person that owns this piece?
Correct.
So to speak, like, so they owned the entire piece, and then they came in and asked to subdivide with that line going down it?
Mhm.
And this is the same individual that then you have a contract with
yes.
related
The
to
sellers,
this?
correct.
Are you the seller?
Yes,
Oh, sweet.
I don't know.
yes.
Yeah, maybe you can answer, yeah.
My mom owned this property, and when she passed away a couple of years ago, it got divided up between the kids.
Okay.
And that's why it was broke down this way.
And you came into the city and asked to subdivide it, or did you
Well,
just divide it?
No, it's never, when I decided to sell it, there's a few people that came in that was interested in buying it and wanted to know their options to do it.
So I guess you say when your mother passed away, it was divided between the kids.
Yeah.
I guess that's the part I'm wondering is, was that subdivided with the city, or did you guys just draw the lines on
Well,
it?
yeah, there was the surveyor, she kind of drew it up, so
And then went and
according to
recorded,
my mom's will, so,
and then you guys went and recorded it with
Right.
the county.
correct.
Okay. And then from there, you're looking at options on what to do with the
Yep.
rest of it, I guess. Okay, that helps explain it.
Okay.
Okay,
Can I
thank
get
you.
your name?
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Rick Couch.
Rick. Thank you.
Yeah, my mom owned that for umpteen years, so.
And she owned, and just to be clear, she owned, so I'm looking at, it looks like 3 different
She owned,
pieces,
yeah,
right?
she owned that whole patch, that whole part, all that.
Okay,
So she got that, and her sister, when my grandma died, her sister got this piece, and my mom got this piece.
and then what's that, so right to the back end, it
It-
looks like a little square back, what's going on
Yeah, this guy bought that from her
with that? Okay,
quite a few years ago.
so that's out of
For-
her
When he
hands.
bought this to do whatever he needed some more, a little bit more property, so he bought an acre here, and I think he bought this from Mahoney's also.
Okay, but then the remaining, looks like there's a piece that has a house, maybe 2. I
No,
can't
there's-
tell.
that's
There's-
all.
Yeah, that's a house.
Oh, that
The
is.
one is a house,
That's a house, and that's a house.
on the top end
Yeah,
is a house.
this was my mom's house. This is where she lived.
Okay, and so then when she
Then my
died,
sister built here years ago
okay.
and sold that. So
So then your mother passes away, and then you guys survey it out and then record it like
Yeah.
that. Okay. All right, but you didn't come. If I'm getting this right, but you didn't come through the city to get it
no,
approved
we
or anything
didn't.
like that. Okay. All right.
I know the surveyor. She drew up to subdivide that whole thing, and we really didn't want to subdivide it at the time. So then we came up with this idea.
Okay, and they just recorded that with the county.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You
That
betcha.
helps me.
So it wouldn't
yeah.
have gotten approved by the city to be recorded?
Well, that was what my question was. It didn't sound like it came through the city, but so that was my question, I guess, was to figure out if it came through us or sometimes
Would they allow them to update the plat maps and adjust it and reassign new parcel IDs without city approval?
I don't know what the county does, but sometimes people go up there and record stuff.
Well,
So that was my main question, was whether it came through us or not. Okay. Let me see if anybody in the audience wants to say anything to this particular request. Yeah, sure.
Some clarity.
Yeah.
So, my name is Lori McCullough. I live here in Hooper, just south
Okay.
of this property here. You had mentioned a tree business and a community garden growing lavender.
Yeah.
Like a business, or is that just a?
No, there's no people gonna be, you're talking about traffic? Is that what you're worried about? No,
Oh,
no
no.
traffic. No traffic.
just farm area.
Just a farm area.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then,
that's-
and then you had mentioned something about people coming in and planting trees or different
that's-
trees, or, oh, that's
No.
you. And that's your,
That's
Yeah,
us. We
that's
own
us.
Bright Star Tree Company.
Oh, okay,
So
so
we do
you-
pruning and stuff like that. And so when we tear out a tree,
mm,
during the fall, we go buy other trees. And so what we want to do is we want to plant trees
For them.
for them, for people that want the trees. And then we dig them back up. We grow them inside containers in the ground.
okay,
And so it keeps the roots nice and cool.
okay.
And they grow better. And then
Well, I
but
think
you have
that's
to
a
put 'em-
fabulous
You have to put them
idea.
in the ground. You can't put
because
them in pots.
You'd mentioned that this had been rezoned for 3/4 acre lots.
It's the future zoning plan
Yeah, yeah.
is planned for that.
So I would rather see one here than
Yeah, that would lock that all up.
multiple.
The-
Okay,
the-
I'm in agreement with that.
the-
Thank you.
The premises will be basically following city, whatever they want me to set it back for the house. And then, of course, just farming.
Anybody else want to make a public comment on this request? 1, 2, 3. Okay, time's up. All right, thank you. All right, anything, I mean, there was only one public comment, but anything else you want to add to it that you haven't already mentioned?
No, we like Hooper and we want to be here.
I just
All right.
think it's in line with the city, right? It's gonna be the highest and best use of the property for what's there. I mean, right now it's currently landlocked with what's in place. I mean, if anything, the other owner behind is the only person that come through and purchase that. If he does that, then obviously we'd have the opportunity to subdivide that into 3/4 acre lots and leave a parcel piece in the front. But I just think with what's currently out there, it's obviously in line with, I'm sure, what you guys
And keep the
think
green space.
be in line with.
All right, thank you. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate the input. Like I said,
Thank
we'll
you, sir.
shoot for roughly 2 weeks, and I'll do a written decision.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank
It's
you.
good. Thanks for all.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our variance request today. So with that, we'll end our meeting.